We got faces on mountains, guys, and people dying in the street. There's types of people who allow certain things to happen. Oh my god. That is
Like,
that is deep. That is gorgeous.
and like, we heard a lot. We heard a lot during COVID how Shakespeare wrote Taming of the Shrew during the pandemic. But like, I wrote a book and I made lace. So, am I better than Shakespeare?
I mean, was Shakespeare a man? And in those times, I feel like we need to think a lot more in like, demographically speaking, right? Every time because I think about people from the past, and that's how I got into my whole debacle about John Brown, because I was kind of like, well, I mean, yeah, no, cool, great, but imagine a situation that would have been better. And it's just the way people would talk about him. It's like, you're romanticizing people of the past, and you're not and that's why I started saying rehumanize them, because so a man from the 1800s, you want me to revere, like, look gloriously on his existence because he wanted to murder slave owners.
Yeah.
No,
So,
sorry.
I kind of have felt this is problematic about our founding fathers. And
I mean, think about
so
that
far,
language.
my co-writers have
Fathers.
taken it out of 2 books, but I'm putting it in the 3rd one that like as long as we keep saying that the founding fathers are great men,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
also,
yeah.
riddle me why like the Washington Monument is just a giant phallic statue piercing the sky.
I can't explain to you how many times I've just been like, guys, they put their faces into a mountain. And it's not like just look at the facts, right? Say just a being appears and it has full cognizance of your age, and you're like, okay, let me explain to you why everyone's going to visit this thing. Because I went, my we did a road trip and I learned so much about things, right? And this was a time, and I went to this thing and I'm like, we're going literally to a mountain to see, like, they carved with the time and energy and the circumstances of the country they were in. It's not like they were like, you know what we need to do with our time and energy and focus? This. And now we today are going to go visit. And so I have a little video of me. It was in the beginning of my White Woman Whisperer journey. I don't think I had decided. I don't know. It was like around the time. I think it was October. So maybe a couple months later, I figured out what I needed to. And I'm like tickling their little faces in my video. And I'm like, little slave owners. Because, like, didn't at least one of them own people? And I'm supposed to go, this is great.
George Washington owned people.
I don't even know who's up there, to be
George
honest.
Washington, the first president, right?
George Washington's up
He
there? Okay.
owned
Okay.
slaves.
Yep,
He owned
yep.
slaves. He was
His wife did.
supposedly anti-slavery, but I believe he only released his slaves after his own death. But maybe that was Jefferson.
Well, right, because I'm pretty sure Martha, because this is a thing that white women specifically need to also understand. Is I understand, like, you were also property, but you were allowed to own enslaved people before you could own anything else. Before you got the right to whatever anything, you could be bequeathed people. And so I think the stories about Martha Washington is that he married her because she had a bunch. From dad, I don't know, I don't care that much about it. But it was like 40% of the slave owners were women, so that matters, but that isn't talked about for a reason, right? And so, like, a part of feminism was catching up and being equal to men, and like, but this is something you did have. Those were people would marry you so that they could have what you like. It's part of it.
Yeah.
But the faces on the mountain, like, how many times? It's a cult. Oh, and then we want to talk about the places that are more honestly cults, I guess, more honestly culty. And we're like, whoa, look at those statues to the king. And like, yeah, what do you think we have?
But this is what I've started saying now, right? So today it was Seventh-day Adventist, right? And they're like, why do you consider it a cult? And I just like, I've started to turn this around and be like, why do you think Children of God is a cult?
Mm.
Why do you think Scientology is a cult?
Hmm.
And then, like, I will use your definition,
Yes,
your words, right? Because
that's really
I
good
know
idea. Yeah.
Seventh-day Adventism is a cult because I have talked to their ex-members and they have the same childhood experiences as me. This was even
Yeah.
one of the ways that I knew instinctively that AA was a cult because children of steppers have cult baby stories.
Ooh. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this has been, and this is a big part of my second book on American, is kind of, I say like the heartbreak of finding out that like the aunties in the cult weren't wrong.
Mm.
So for me, it has been like finding out that like America is not a great country.
Mm.
And like the
Right.
reason people go join cults is because there are broken systems, right? They're seeking something, they want to fix something,
Yeah.
and a lot of it was racism. Um, but it's like it's true that America is not this wonderful city on a hill, blasey blasey blah, right? But like I came out of my cult and I sort of was just like, oh, opposite propaganda, right?
Mm.
Now I'm in
Yeah.
Texas, now I'm listening to how great America is, and then I'm in the military. And I mean, I think coming the way
Overcorrecting a little.
the war in Afghanistan ended, like really radicalized a lot of us veterans and left us like really understanding, right? Like, I mean, the way we left our right, like I think it was 1 million translators we had work for us, and we maybe got 100,000 of them out, right? Like we
Ooh.
promised everybody that worked with us that we would get them out of the country, right? We would not leave them to the Taliban, and then we just failed, right? So we could think whatever we wanted about the rest of the war, but like we like in our bones, right? When Kandahar and then Kabul fell in a week, I mean, my
Mm.
husband and I were not out of our pajamas. Like it was just like in our bones, like what did we do? What was this
Mm.
whole thing? And so now you have like so many of us deconstructing this, and it's
Yeah.
like, what were we ever supporting in the first place? Right? Like
Right.
I went to the death chamber in college in Texas because I was a criminal justice major. And at
Mm.
19 years old, I was like, I can't get on board with the death penalty. Changed my whole career plan. 6 years later, I'm in the military. Like, what? like,
Yeah.
like,
Well, because when we don't go far back enough to figure out why this exists, like we're just gonna cult shop. Because we're not realizing that what we are seeking is the problem, but we were given that
yes,
to seek,
yes.
right?
And
So they took
this
everything
is what
away and
And
gave
this
you
is
the
where I
option.
realized that, like, what I'm going through with my obvious cult deconstruction is
Hmm.
like either what all millennials are going through or what all white millennials are going through, and the way that I like in my deconstruction of white supremacy journey, right? I'm like, what do I do? How do I deconstruct whiteness? And the answer is find your actual roots.
Yeah.
And I had been knowing that the cult took that from me, right? Like the cult took me away from a family that was only like 2 generations removed from being immigrants. But
Hmm.
whiteness took that away from all white people.
Yeah. And I feel like there is a place for white women to find their community as white women who had their community stolen from them. Right. I feel like there's a missing this. You can't see it, but I've been calling it eracism because I think
Mm,
that's more of what's actually happening than any kind of active action. It's taking away. And someone had
yeah.
said like they created emptiness. It didn't
Yeah.
exist already, but it created emptiness.
Oh, you're so good with words. I'm still all in your chapter. But
they,
and this is so this book, White Women Get Ready, that I've been talking about, and like today I was reading this part about like embodied trauma,
mm,
right? And how like
mm,
white people have trauma from racism also,
Oh my
right?
gosh,
And
yes.
this
Yes,
is one of
yes,
the
yes.
things that I'm realizing as I'm deconstructing modern day, right? Like right time now, deconstructing racism and and white supremacy and anti-racism, and like my community is rapidly changing from groups that I have to seek out, being mostly white people, from just like community, you
Right.
know? And where was I going with that? Oh, but it really sticks out to me, I feel like, what white women lost,
Yeah.
right? And not in a, oh, our trauma's the same at
No,
all. But this was the
no.
part, I was reading about today. And it does feel like this. Like, honestly, reading through this book with my audience.
Mhm.
Although I just got demonetized again today. So now I'm starting all over again. But
But see,
I know
but
it's been
see,
13
but see,
days. I know. I know.
it's so frustrating.
I'm just playing their game now. I don't even care.
Right, you
Um,
have to prepare for that,
right.
and it can be frustrating and exhausting and like, ah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it almost is like
But
after
reading,
it proves
reading this
itself.
is nice, right? Because it's like, yeah, nobody talks about that, right? Like nobody talks about like the women,
Yeah,
again, the white women were not free, right? And we were there alone in the plantation house by ourselves, freaking freezing cold in the castle or whatever, right? And just
yep,
like
yep.
dealing with all of the trauma alone. And this is what I feel like white women do, right? Is we deal with
Mhm.
all of our trauma alone.
Right, and you
And
don't see each other as because you're told you're competition, and to be fair, you are, the people closest to you are the ones who can cause you the most harm. Right? Stranger danger was put on people, right? White women can hurt black women in the office more than a white man can because there's this betrayal and sense of togetherness and a shared reality that we realize we're not sharing the reality anymore, and that hurts. But you guys, like, you think community means go find it and colonize it a little bit. Like, you're still in the like, go find one that exists outside of me. But like, there's a lot of y'all. So, and I've been saying, like, wear the colors. And like you said, when you're wearing colors, you will find people like you and read about being a white woman. But there is this like, I want to feel like the bad words. It's interesting that like, say them, make it about race, say white,
yeah, yeah.
say I'm a white, and apparently
And
that creates your community right there.
you know what? Someone asked me, a man in the military asked me this about what he can do. He's like, now my eyes have been open, right? I've been in for 15 years, blah, blah, blah. Like, what do I do when I'm talking to other men? And I was like, you know what? Black women have told white women, make it about race. So, like, I think this is good advice, right? Like,
Yeah.
make it about gender, right? Like, ask your buddies if they know the statistics, like, and what that means.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've learned from you, I was even talking about to my husband about the conversation we had last time, which is the dynamic with me dating a black man.
Mm-hmm.
And, the way I explained it to him, I was like, it's the same way that me and our child are safe with you as long as you want us to be, which is a realization we've had in deconstructing patriarchy.
Yeah.
And it's like, and when you realize that, right, like everyone wants an answer, so like I live now in a largely not white community, and I'm aware that like I'm a safe person, like I'm building a part of the community, right? Like people appreciate me, but as long as I want to be,
Right.
right? And like
Yep. As long as
that
you.
dynamic, nobody wants to talk about it, you know?
Right.
And
And what
that
does that mean?
dynamic, I think we can't get together as white women and talk about the Slovakian culture that I lost without also talking about what our people gained from that, and like what that means for right now.
Yeah. Like what? There is a language to white womanhood, whether you want to admit it or not. But it's like got hold. It keeps you from, just like the cultic language keeps you from engaging with your embodied self and like actually being there and saying, getting more out of the conversation than like policing each other and making rules. And I had seen someone say, they had created a group of 149 like white women, and they were ready to do the work. And the first thing they did was make a list of the rules. Like, it has to come from a little bit more naturalist space. And when you're still looking for what sounds like, certainty, and this is the community, you are in it now. Like, that's not how it feels or looks like. You
Yeah.
can't
And I think
declare yourself
and I think
anything.
also you don't make the rules, right? The rules are kind of like it's like parenting without punishment, right? Or like natural, like you use natural consequences in the
Yeah,
chapter. And
yeah.
like that's how I parent. And people are like, "What do you mean?" Right? And it's like, "Well, as it is safe, right? Like
Yep.
I allow the child to make their choices and there are natural consequences, right? So like right now, she's 9 and she thinks she's a teenager,
Hmm.
which for the most part is fine. But when you have just been yelling at me for 15 minutes and now you want me to drive you to your play date, I don't think so, ma'am.
Yeah,
Right? And
that's
like
that's
it's
a
different. If
consequence.
you're an actual teenager, you can get on your bike and leave and you don't need me to be
Hmm.
like feeling friendly towards you right now. But if you're 9, you do.
And that's unless it's raining. And if it's raining, then there are consequences then too.
Right. And it's just like so there's another one I've done with her since she's about 3 years old. It's just like I don't help you look for stuff. I don't
Hmm.
nag,
Hmm.
but I don't help you look for stuff. As is age appropriate, right? So
Yeah,
obviously when she was little, like once a month, I would have to go in and clean her room myself and keep it in order. But then like it's just like, no, go find your thing. Because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
how you teach people to clean up, to have an organizational system, right? And like this child now makes her bed every day. Her father and I don't do that. Like we had enough of that in the military, right? So
Right.
she's never even seen that model. But like she
Oh,
came up with
interesting.
her own organizational system for her
Her
stuff.
own preferences for how to live. Like, when you grow up, I had to kind of do that myself and realize what is for me and what is because I was told I had to, just because I had to. I like when the bed is made, I find, just because I like to walk in and the bed is made. And so I make it. It's not because I
Mhm.
think I should. I don't care if the living room is got stuff all over it. That doesn't make me feel joy when it's all put away. I like seeing all of the things. So I had to kind of
Yeah.
come into those. But if I had those consequences, I mean, it's a little of this, little of that. But my mom used to threaten to clean my room for me, and that was enough for me. She would say, "I will
Right.
clean it for you," and I go, "Oh no, don't
And
want that," just
I
because
think
like then I couldn't find anything.
people also confuse natural consequences with no consequences.
Right?
Right? And it's like those are very different things. And
There
that's
will be
so
consequences.
that's my husband's way of dealing with it, right? Like I'm fine with a little more clutter. His way of dealing with it is if you don't clean this now, I'm going to clean it. And then she
Yeah,
does, right?
right. And like it's also knowing your child.
Yeah.
To me, like maybe other people that would be like, "Oh, then she do it." She wouldn't clean it. I don't think. I don't know, but she just knew. 2 times was enough for me to think, "Oh God, if she cleans it, I won't be able to have my own system and like get my stuff." And it just took responsibility for it enough. Um, and also like consequences maybe aren't automatic, but just they are,
Here
they happen. You don't have to come in and make sure they don't get like it's very like paternalism, I think, is one of the more interesting. So back to what we were saying about the founding fathers. What? Fathers? Since when have they been great at doing good at stuff? Anything. Like since then. Like they set it up for fathers, right? Someone said I want to talk a lot about, well, maybe I won't even, but I've been thinking a lot about Monica Lewinsky, white women, because I'd like to, what people think is the public opinion and how people reacted to Monica Lewinsky. I think there's a trove of source information you could get from your own indoctrination in how you felt about that thing. Because I don't think I didn't get a lot of, I don't think Black women agreed with the press stuff. That sounds like Scientology fair gaming someone. I Anyway, but they were
It's
saying like
still
Bill Clinton was like the father figure of America, and so that is why blah 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 blah. Everyone hates. It was it gave fair game to me. It's like first they said you're gonna get prison time if you don't do this sting operation on him. So this was like his
right.
opposers, and so she's threatened there, and then so she does it, and now uh,
The fact
and
that
from a woman.
it,
Linda Tripp is the reason why she even got all of this stuff,
it
and
is
women treated her
still
horribly
crazy to me
so
that
much.
it is still crazy to me that we all, and I'm sure this is white culture, right? Like
Right?
decided that the
Yep.
22-year-old was at fault. Like that
It
is
makes no sense.
bonkers to me. That is bonkers.
It's faces on a mountain. It is putting faces on a mountain and saying this is a good idea. This is what the country needs to galvanize ourselves. But they're not even attractive. Like the founding fathers. And
Oh,
then we're all like
do you
looking
know
to
this
them.
one? Do you know that Sam Adams' beer, it's
Yeah.
not actually Sam Adams' picture because he was so ugly that they put Paul Revere's face on it instead.
Honestly, wouldn't, and they could all be the same guy to me. But and Sam Adams was a president? Was he? John Adams
No,
was. I doesn't even.
no, I don't know
I don't
what.
know.
I don't remember. He was one of these revolutionaries, I
Right,
believe.
right.
Uh
And like apparently,
I just know this detail because I've toured the Bush, uh, the Budweiser, what's it called? Bush
factory or something.
Anaheim something. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but the names, but the fact that we have just had it around for so long, I don't. I
Yeah.
think there was just so much there to build community around, and observational humor has to be part of it. Or maybe not, maybe not. Maybe I'm projecting, but like to me, like the way people when they leave cults, talk about the cult they were in. That's a community, ex cult members. They
Yes.
because only you have that
And
experience.
and I always say there's no sisterhood like the ex-cult sisterhood, right? And this is true for veterans, and it's just like, and it's also because of this. Because bonding comes from going through really hard things together. Because like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
you know like when your company CEO like hires these rangers to take you through this event, and like no,
yeah, yeah,
bonding like a military team comes from going through the type of things that are not ethical
yeah.
to engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like Asheville, North Carolina right now is feeling very, very bonded as a community
Yeah.
because they just survived the storm, right? Even something like Taylor Swift Eras Tour dancers going through a terrorist threat and having to like respond to that, right? In a crazy year, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is going to be stuff that bonds you. And I think this is so insanely clear when you look at like white communities and communities, like just non-white communities in general in
Yeah.
America, that
Yeah.
like you have more community because you have to, because you survive hard things together. And
Yeah.
in whiteness is all about just like
Ease.
not rocking the boat so that you don't have to deal with waves, right?
Right. Like the idea that waves are a problem. Waves are natural. I'm going to need you to acknowledge them because you're going to keep getting, knocked over as if with surprise if you don't turn around and say, hey, wave's coming.
Right.
But you're going to be mad at the wave. Are you going to be mad at the boat, whatever, At some point, you have to take some personal responsibility for your own experiences, but not like in a blame. You have to remove that kind of shame of being a part of a group that you didn't ask to be a part of. So like, welcome to living in America. But there's so much
Yeah.
more beauty and like stuff that I think white women could get out of it. It just you have to acknowledge your white women first and then be like, okay, guys, so
100%.
the way we do this the way we do that, because like once you ring the bell, you can't unring it. Like you start to, I made a video about the knitter thing, and I said I think people, just like a funny hot take, I think people should start calling themselves fiber artists instead of knitter, because when white people say, hey knitters,
Mm-hmm.
ah, and then people are like, well, I can't unhear it now. And it's so cute in there. No one's mad in that comment section. I think that's cute. A bunch of white women. And then talking about the little things where we pour, it's called a jigger. But like, they were like, we need something else for this name too. And that's.
Does knitting cult lady sound bad?
No. It's the
Okay.
ER. It's the hard
I'm like,
R
I
with
can
the
change
two.
it to crocheting
No,
cult lady. Okay.
knitting is fine. It doesn't even sound like that to me, right?
It's
But
the
it's like
ER. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the, even if it like digger could get, I think that's fine. I
It's
don't
the
know,
way
but
you say that. It's the way we say that R sound. And by the way,
yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I have a hard time with that R sound because I didn't grow up in America. That hard R, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
names like Rory and words like rural and hierarchical are really hard for me to
Terrible.
say.
They're not great words. I don't
And
even
of
like them.
course, the word hierarchical appears in all of my books.
Sure. And I always spell it wrong. I don't know if then now I realize, oh, there's so much like conversation about highness in American culture, like being on top and big upper hand, looking down on people, and like hierarchy, right? So like I like that higher part and getting high, but also like you get hired. That's just you made that word up, and it's still like a part of it. And you climb the ladder and you whatever. And fired, I think, is a whole other thing. Like the fire element being a part of stuff. And they're always putting
Yeah.
out fires. You work
And
in a corporate office, there's no fire.
there's something else I was thinking about this analogy when when I was reading the chapter is like the higher you go, the less stable everything is, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the higher up a ladder is, the more it's
Right.
rocking. The more also important it is that you stay on, right? If you're on a 2-foot ladder, it's not that important if you fall off. If
And
you're on a
like you get
12-foot ladder, it's very, very crucial to not fall off.
yes, and like you get more nervous of walking towards the edge. It's scarier than if you weren't, because typically if it's down there, you're not going to be fearful of looking over the edge, but you get further and further from feeling comfortable as you're higher up because the risk is so much higher with every step. That yeah, I used to also just say, and they don't got no sunscreen and no one's bringing it, they're all sunburnt. You got great views, but you're burning and you're miserable, and like, oh, you look down on everybody. Also, the whole 30-foot view thing. If you're not in combat, why is that a better way to look at things? If you're not trying to spot the people and like, I think you're better off lower where you can see people and they don't look like ants, and you can, know what's going on.
So
But instead of like, get in a
here you
plane.
go. Yeah. If you're not in combat, why are you up in a guard tower?
Right. Why do you need like a sniper shot angle to be like, what do we got here? No. But we are, it's all a game. Like, I don't know. I don't know if the game is like, gotcha. Everything is about making sure, but it's that paternalism of protection and permission and like all these different walls and boundaries, high hats and high homes. I was saying like these pointy, you love the pointy hats. And everything's taller. The president, if you're taller, be president. What? And we're supposed to look up to these fathers. How were they as fathers? Did we ever find out? I'm actually
I
pretty
mean,
curious.
Thomas Jefferson enslaved his own children, and he's one of the
Right,
founding
right,
fathers.
right, right, right. But here's the problem when you say that is that white people see you have
White
like
people
you're
also do that to their children.
yeah, well that too, but also that white people come in for Thomas Jefferson for some reason, and they love to talk about how they loved each other, and 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 see like where does that come from? How this automatic response I've never had, right? So I am not a community member necessarily. Well, I can be to white women, but I don't have that experience. So, and learning about your privilege comes with hearing the experiences of, or or your lack of privilege comes from hearing about the privilege of other people. When you go, oh, how long is it going to take you to get ready for this thing? And they're like, I'll just go. I'm like, what? You're not going to map out your stops and your blah, 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 blah. I don't know that until I hear it. So there is benefits to talking about your experiences that you don't know yet until you do it. And it's from white women who had no idea that they were telling me a bunch of privilege stuff that I learned a speaking point that I can connect us on. It's not a shameful thing. It
Like
has to be
the
something you talk about.
Africa thing. Have I told you about this?
I
So
don't know.
in my prologue of my book, I'm a little girl and I'm standing on the Brazilian shore looking out into the ocean, like wistfully, right? Because I'm a prisoner in a cult, like wondering if I could see Africa.
Mm.
And look, it was beautifully written. Okay. And then when we did the sensitivity review, it was pointed out to me that this is called the infantilization of Africa. Right. I didn't say I was standing on the shore of South America looking
Mm.
across to Africa. I said I was standing on the Brazilian shore looking across to, turns out, Angola, right, is what's across from there, which I didn't even know, right? Like, it was
Yeah.
true to my experience as a white kid living in Brazil that the way kids in America talk about digging a hole to China at the beach,
Yeah.
like we would talk about swimming across to Africa.
Yeah.
So I went and looked it up, and then it was so interesting because then, like, people, Angola, when you say Angola, like, it kind of stops you, right? It takes you out, and you're like, why Angola? And then people that know Angola speaks Portuguese are like, oh, is this some kind of connection? And all of this stuff. I decided that I'm going to, like, whatever, let's do the thing that hurts white supremacy, right? Even if it messes up the prologue, but
Yeah.
just talking about it. And I think, like, for some reason, this one is not that connected to shame for people. So people kind of accept it, right? And like when I say that to
Mm-hmm.
people, I'm like, so then the very next summer, my husband goes to Kenya for 6 weeks, right? And like the entire 6 weeks, I just had to keep catching myself from saying Africa, right?
Ooh.
Kenya. And
Yeah.
like his trip got changed from Vietnam to Kenya. And like I wouldn't have been saying, oh, he's in Asia, right?
Asia.
I would
Yeah.
have been saying he's in Vietnam. And it's so like embedded in our culture. But it's like, it's one of those things that like once you see it, you'll see it everywhere. And then you can just bring
Yeah.
it up with other people and talk about it. And like, that's
Yeah.
how it should go. Right? Like
In an interested way. Yeah.
it should literally be this simple, white ladies. Like, oh, the other day I got told, oh, sacred cow is maybe like a bit offensive, right? Because there are millions of people in the world to whom cows are sacred.
Yeah.
And I was immediately like, okay, I get it. My only problem is I need a term
Yeah.
for like holding something sacred. So I decided to come up with the term sacred moose.
There
And
you
that's
go.
what I use now. I'm
That
like,
works
it
too.
gets the point across, makes people laugh a little, and like,
If it gets the point across, if it communicates what you are desiring, then it's a good thing. But that is it's interesting. The whole bad words thing I
yeah.
have up here too. It's like, what I'm curious,
Well,
what is your understanding of like communism as a bad word? Like as a, you know what I mean? Like just today I realized, because I didn't understand but I also didn't understand people didn't like Jews still, like a Jewish person. I thought it brought me a little bit more privilege, which I guess sometimes it did. Anyway, but like communism, because they were like Martin Luther King, he was accused of communism, but it feels like they were just saying it was like when black wasn't allowed anymore. They just picked a thing. Because why would that be fear? Like, if this person has these beliefs that
yeah,
this is how the economics should go, that's a
because
scary thing.
we're programmed. That was one of the interesting things for me going into the American military, because I lived in Brazil, which is a socialist country. Um not at all what people think about with, socialist, but like medical care, right? Like a lot
Yeah,
of the
okay.
things are socialist. You can't take your kids out of the country without permission, etc.
Nice.
But like,
Like,
so I joined the army, and as you said, like communism is a bad word, socialism is a bad word, but like the military is a socialist organization. Like that's
right.
literally how it works. And even now on the outside, it's like as veterans, like we're the only ones with universal health care. We're the only ones with like free education.
Oh my god. That actually, that's okay. Yeah, that's gaslighting. How dare they? Because you think, what's more American? But it's
But this
also,
is
you're wearing camouflage in the city.
but this is the
That doesn't even make
conversation. This
sense.
is the conversation we don't want to have, is that the military is a cult. We've just decided
Right.
that 1% of our population needs to be in a cult in order to protect the rest of us. We
And then
just
the
don't want to
rest of us have
say
to
it
say
in
thank
words
you.
like that.
And the rest of us have to go, thank you for the service. Just because they're wearing camouflage where we're not in the woods, sir. We're not in the woods. Do you realize how crazy it was that they were like, war on drugs? Let's wear camouflage in the hood.
Did
What
you
do we
ever, I'm sure
do?
you've seen it, but there was a thing called digital camouflage. So it
What?
was camouflage colors, but it was all little squares like this. So it looked like a olden days video game, right? Like it was all pixelated. And
Uh-huh.
it was like some dude, I'm sure, like decided that because of imagery and blah blah blah, computer. At some point, the military decided that it was important for camouflage to be pixelated. And like that was the uniform I wore for my entire career, unless I was going to the desert, in which they still gave us jungle camouflage. The Marines at least had desert camo. The Army, no.
Just like, sometimes
But
faces on mountains.
the
Faces on
funniest,
mountains in real
the
life.
funniest is that the Navy's camouflage is blue.
Blue camouflage.
Because you're trying to be camouflaged in the ocean.
Wait, they're on a boat, right?
And look,
They're on a boat.
the reality is this, as Navy people will tell you, they're like, you fall off an aircraft carrier, like unless you're in bright orange and have a lot of luck, no one's ever going to see you again. It doesn't matter what color your uniform is. But it's still hilarious. Like what are you doing?
What is the goal? Why are we here? And why does everyone else have to say thank you? Because you did it. I'm not feeling grateful for you, random stranger, because you're wearing this outfit. Never got that. But also, that was never like a part of, I don't know. I didn't grow up with that. These are like maybe the autism traits coming out later where I'm like, well, this is weird that people do this. I learned from a white woman. Anyway, she was saying, oh, my daughter, like, waves to police officers because like a sign of respect. That's like what they taught her or something. That's like part of white culture or something. You see police officer, you wave, say hello. He's doing a great job or something. I'm not sure. I was what 30 or something when I heard this, and I'm thinking, that I don't want that little girl to have any black friends. I don't want that. Now, you, I, there's just so many problems with it, but I also didn't know. I know my mom used to like wave to the crossing guards every time, but and I thought that was weird. But that's crossing guards. That's as close as I can understand that. Like you're teaching your daughters that. Also, oh my god, that element just scared me. That police officers are to be like respected and revered, and they're gonna grow up. Do you know what police officers do to their wives? Demographically, not great stuff. And so you got her, he's supposed to protect me and keep me safe. Wrong. Actually, more scary for her than it for any black woman. Because, that I'm just saying I don't want her to think she can ever have little black girls coming over to her house and feeling sick. But to even bring that up in the conversation that you're having with me and us as a group after George Floyd and stuff in this corporate setting, and you're like, I don't know what to do now with my daughter, and she's with the cops, and I don't know, should she? We're not sharing realities at that point, which is okay. Which is okay.
I also think this purity of children concept is a super whiteness thing.
Mm-hmm.
I always said to my husband, it is an entirely American idea that teenagers are disgusted by the concept of their parents having sex. That is taught to us in the media. I've never seen that in another country. It's where you're more likely to share a wall, right, with your parents, or just live in much closer quarters, right? And it's just,
yeah.
and anyways, going
That's
back to this, the purity of children and the topics they can't be raised around, right? And I had somebody very close to me basically stop talking to me because I am talking about stuff publicly, and they thought that you had to just ignore all your trauma in order to raise a child. And I was like, that my child gets things explained to her at age appropriate levels.
Right.
But she lives in a house where serious topics are being discussed all of the time because my work is very serious. And so, of course, mommy, what's a cult? Conversation was had at 6. And then by 6.5, she was calling me a cult leader whenever she was mad at me. But children can
at
be
least
taught.
that's based in reality.
Children can be taught what rape and assault are and how putting your hands on other people is not okay. Children can be taught that, police are dangerous, right? It's just this idea that you have to avoid heavy topics with children, I think. First of all, it's probably really confusing to the children because they're living in the world where serious things are going on all the time.
There's a reason they're asking. And it's not just comfort that they need. Comfort isn't the only thing. Sometimes I do compare people how they treat their dogs. Cesar Millan used to say Americans have trouble with dog behavior because they just give affection, not affection, exercise, and discipline. And natural consequences are being controlled, where you think these kids shouldn't have to have this experience of learning this thing that might make them uncomfortable. Negative experiences aren't bad for you. That's not a thing. Negative experiences are part of living, especially if you're living in a cult experience. To be like, no, 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 to anything, even to a kid seeing something negative, and you're going, well, it's not really bad. What? And I think there's the binary thinking of adult and child that you are doing yourself a disservice and labeling child innocent, the controlling consequences. Not necessary. And I think drinking age and that's how we get so much binge drinking here. Because we're like, oh my God.
100%.
We got access. We got to drink it all.
This reminds me of your thing about when white girls go out as a group versus black girls, right? So I, in college, just having turned 21, went to Germany, where of course drinking age is 18.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so in our school, at Wednesdays, people had full day seminars, right? So if you didn't have a Wednesday seminar, you had a day off. So every Tuesday there was a pub crawl, and it started in the college cafeteria, right? And then went through the town, and everyone's looking out for the college students. The college students are all looking out for each other. The 18-year-olds who are brand new get to hang out with the 22-year-olds who know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was lovely. And I was like, you know, my experience at college where like first of all, I should have freaking known the autism then, but like I got a fake ID when I was 20 years old just so I could go sit in a quiet martini bar instead of like the loud, you know, place that you could sneak into. But like a big part of the reason was most of my friends were older and you couldn't hang out, right? Like if you're in American college, it's split
Yeah.
between, you know, freshmen and sophomores who can hang out with each other and junior and seniors who can hang out with each other. And if
Mm,
you bring that up, right, the only thing people are going to say is, well, maybe you don't want the 18-year-old women hanging out with the 22-year-old. Like, no, you want the freshmen hanging out with the seniors who
yeah.
can advise them, who they see graduating, who they see going through all these things, right? Like
It's
having
just
this
assuming,
division.
yeah,
And
going
come
to
on,
fear
like
based.
we're all drinking. Like we're all at the same school. We're all going to the same parties. We're all drinking anyway, right? You're just
Right.
making it like so with the binge drinking, right? Until I was 21, it was like you get together at the apartment, you drink as much as you can, and then you go to the club. As soon as I turned 21, it's like, oh, now you have to buy your own liquor and like
Yeah.
it's not that fun because you can do it whenever you want.
And that would should have been the point the whole time, but you're, controlling the consequences and saying, well, now it's this secret thing that you shouldn't and you do have to do, and this is what adults do, and if you want to be cool, okay. So now, and then you get the I'm drinking a bunch in the at home because blah blah blah. I don't want to have to pay for. It. I don't want to have to get carded to. Then you go to the place, and then a man's like, "Hey, here's a drink," and you're like, "Cool, I got a drink. I didn't have to do all that stuff for it." But you drank enough for the whole thing, remember? But that's not what happens when you get there. And people buy a drink. You can't just stand there without a drink. And it's just bad. It's just a bad time. It's the wrong reasons to do things, but giving access, controlling access is colonialism. It's like needing it. If you like something, you want it, it's yours, you got to have it. And it's not ever to assume someone's going to share with you. No, you got to take it from them. You want access to a snowblower? Well, there's one guy on the street that has one. No, but you don't know because so now we all have to buy one. It's the same thing all the time. And fostering that is part of the cult thing. Is isolating you from each other and saying, yeah, but no, they don't want to. You don't want to have to do this and if and that. And you create all these things in your head, and you're not focused on the reality of what's happening. Is this a bad word? Why am I policing these people saying this word? Who does it help if we're not allowed to say the word rape without feeling the need to defend ourselves? Why is white supremacy a term that people are uncomfortable with when it was the thing? But we got faces on mountains, guys, and people dying in the street. There's types of people who allow certain things to happen, and we have to be like, okay, maybe let's be unladylike and unprofessional and inappropriate a little bit more, because being appropriate and professional and polite and all that stuff, faces on mountains.
I
You
need to
think
write that
Elon Musk is
down.
any different?
I can't find paper.
I'm always like keeping stuff with me
We've
now
got
because I'm like,
faces on mountains,
yeah,
and people dying in the street.
yeah. Both of those people. Which one do you
I
think Elon?
just feel like I'm going to ask you if I can put that line in my musical at some point.
That's fine with me, because I need like I'm just stating observational facts, right? But when you have to allow yourself to go and rehumanize all of the people, not just like this group. This was a bad group, and so I just have to find blah 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 blah. Right? This cult is bad. Let me just go to the. And unfortunately, the systems are not designed the way you would design them to help the people of the country. Right? Because if someone is at the same time making faces on mountains, when you know what was going on in the country, it wasn't a great time for a lot of people. And they were like, hey, we're doing this. Doesn't that sound like something that could happen today? I don't know. I could see it. They went to space for 10 minutes. They have all the money. Space, pointy, they couldn't get to space back then. They said, put our faces as high up as possible.
This is what I want to say. Like, I don't feel like there's a significant difference between the Washington Monument and Jeff Bezos' penis rocket. Like
No,
same thing.
they just couldn't. They didn't have the access then to actually go up there. We were like, we got you. Who? We don't need this earth thing that we live and depend on is a beautiful, amazing resource that has given me the ability to do this. No, I want to go up higher. I want to go see it from up in a place I've never. Shut. It's cold. It's cold. I think. Um, what's the point? The biggest, tallest, highest PP building, and and it comes from the same thing that creates religions, the hierarchy. It's in the word, just spelt stupid. And like I live kind of high up in a building, which is part of a thing. But when I look, and the tallest things are churches all the time. It's always like, but barely for any reason. Nothing's happening at the top there, but it's the pointiest. It's the tallest, and I can see it more than other stuff. I'm like, okay, just not
That's
taking
what it
things
is.
so personally, and so you can see it better. It's like just
Do you know, if you don't know this, you're going to lose your mind. No building in DC is allowed to be taller than the Washington Monument. That's why DC doesn't look like New York.
they make rules. That's a rule. Someone was like, guys, this is important. This is important. This
Like,
is important.
we're going to build this penis statue, and then we're going to say nobody is allowed to be bigger.
Because it's one thing to build it. It is one thing to build it. It is another to be comfortable enough to say, and nobody else better even think about being bigger than me. Okay? Don't even think about it. Don't talk about it. Natural consequences? No, it doesn't exist. You're not allowed, actually. Anything bigger? Chop it off. It's against the rules. So that, I mean, to me, I think tall. I don't know. Skyscrapers weird. Not a good use of our energy and time either. I think skyline. When you think, I remember, I live right by the George Washington Bridge in New Jersey growing up, and you see the skyline. I just remember being like, yeah, people are working in those buildings. Like a lot of times, in the lights, and that's a lot. That's a lot of lights, guys. In the Empire State Building with its fancy lights and its little. A skyline is a made up thing. We have mountains, and then they were like, guess what? We're on the mountains, but we have beautiful stuff, right? And then they were like, but what if we made our own thing out of making tall buildings? That's supposed to be something to go see, put on postcards and stuff. It's never done. It's always in construction. It's never just a gorgeous thing. There's always orange and building and cranes and stuff. But oh, it's so pretty. Is it? Light pollution. Congestion. Great.
Americans? I don't even think the majority of Americans understand light pollution.
That's like when I realized, oh my God, some white people don't meet black people to their adults. I'm having one of those moments where it's like, yeah, no, of course, right? Because factually the country's so big and segregation and stuff. But yeah, light pollution is
And
so
also,
real.
like, we just have so many cities, so it's like, yeah, some people live far enough away, but
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, like, once you see the sky in Afghanistan at night, like, you'll never think anywhere else has a lot of stars ever again, and just like,
And what does that
yeah.
do to our experience? Like that's kind of an analogy in itself. It's like there is so much already here, but we're all these manufactured values. Skyline, ooh. But it so happens that the skyline is actually making the island sink, and you can't see the stars, and you can't breathe, and you can't live anywhere that's bigger than a shoebox. But
Yeah. And when someone knocks down one of those towers, it kills thousands of people.
Right. But then as a result, we were like, guess what? They killed thousands of people. Guess what we're going to do about that? Kill more people. I don't think that was. Can we do something else about that? Can we find no, we're Americans.
I mean,
We don't stand for this.
even in Brazil, where I grew up, so Brazil is on one tectonic plate. So Brazil does not have natural disasters, but Brazil
Oh,
has mudslides, which is a man-made natural disaster.
oh.
And it's
Well,
bonkers to me.
you know what else is weird? I think a mudslide's a drink.
Do
And I think that's terrible now because I think that's the only thing I know about that. Sorry.
you
Why
know
is
where
that
the
a
name
thing?
Bloody Mary comes from?
No.
Mary Tudor, who killed, tried to burn England back to Catholicism. Although she still killed less people than Henry VIII. But yeah, it's literally, she was called Bloody Mary, and that's what the drink is named after. And we drink it for fun on Sundays.
Yeah.
So much
It's like,
violence.
and, and then you like just look at our paper money that we're just like, yeah, let's murder over this. A lot of this. These white people on paperwork. It's like white, these guys on mountains, on paper, on time. And we're like, well, it's obviously not as, there's a lot that goes into that. But at the end of the day, they're just different dudes. They're just men. They're just men. But because they're in black and white and on green, they're like, yeah, but these were fathers. Have you met a father? They're not getting great like raps even right now. Yeah, but they founded. Even that language right now is pissing me off. They founded this country. They founded it.
Oh my God. Like,
It's not
my.
even good English. They
So,
founded
first
it.
of all, I once wrote an essay called I Had to Teach My Husband How to Parent Because Society Didn't. Because
Bloop,
literally,
bloop. Yeah.
yeah. But like, our kid is 9, right? So we've been working on deconstructing fatherhood versus motherhood for 9 years.
Yeah.
Did a pretty good job, but I'm still not surely full that he comprehends that his kid is his responsibility
Right.
all the time.
Right. It's not
And I'm
like
like, literally
primary is secondary.
everyone. And I watched this happen with so many of my girlfriends when they were like, what? We were equal when we got married. Like, what changed? And what changed was literally like, they're like, here's a baby. We're going to drop it. And the men don't know what to do. And so they would just stand there paralyzed, and the moms just are not going to let the baby fall on the ground.
Yeah.
So we step forward and we do the thing, right? Like,
Right.
nobody ever had to teach me or remind me that my child is my responsibility all of the time. Like, I knew that once I pushed
Yeah.
her out of my body. And I just don't think, it's like little things, right? Like, he'll be
Yeah.
like, oh, do you mind if I go sailing for 8 hours on Saturday? And it's like, that's not the question. The question is, hey, can you take care of our kid for 8 hours this Saturday?
Do you
Because,
mind? Oh, do you mind? That's a tone setting if I have ever heard of it. So like, can
and
I ask a question?
when
No.
I tell you, this man works very, very hard to be a 50% parent, right? Like, I have so much respect for him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not quite sure he realizes that his kid is
Right.
his responsibility all of the time.
Because there's
And not
still
my, how JD Vance said her kids about his wife.
I know, but I believe it.
Oh yeah, he literally said the Usha and her kids, and like,
Yeah.
I kind of
because
feel like all men feel like that a little bit.
I wouldn't doubt it. Because they didn't make them, right?
Yeah.
And there is a different experience in making them than not. And society hasn't put in them that they become something different once they become a father. Because the founding fathers needed no proof of anything. So, but in a communal society, because the whole thing about communism, I think that's interesting, just like the fear sparked, and I would call it communalism if I were gonna call something I would want to live in, because more about the relationship, not the actual commune. Like for the commune, it's more about communalism. But they're not. You shouldn't have to give up who you are. Like in a perfect society, in communalism, he would be able to go do that, and you wouldn't feel complete responsibility
Right.
as a result. Like there would be layers of
Yeah.
different types of like lateral support, I think. And men still feel entitled to some of that because they can. They can feel that. I don't
Yeah.
know, like how I feel about white women sometimes, where I'm like, what happens here? And it's realizing you've had a different experience. I can get you to empathize and care and to share my reality a little bit more, but it isn't your natural state of being
It's not the
to
same.
think about things the way I think about things. And that's tough.
Yeah.
But your like resentment is going to build in because you're not supported in the same way.
Yeah.
Or yeah, because they just have it's like a secondary.
You don't have that visceral experience, like even I remember my husband was so afraid of leaving the baby in the car, right? He did that thing for a while where you get in your car and you put one of your shoes in the back with the baby because you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to get out and walk away without a shoe.
Right.
But I was always just like, I have unmitigated ADHD and I've never been able to remember anything. But like I've never forgotten my baby anywhere.
Yeah.
Like I never there was another one that was so interesting. So when you deploy and you're in a war zone, right? Like everyone has a weapon all of the time. Like you either have a rifle or a sidearm, but like you have your personal assigned weapon. And if you leave that weapon behind, your career is going to be seriously impacted. Okay. So it's like a big, big deal. And like men, all of the time in the first couple weeks, like you're dealing as the security officer, I'm dealing with people losing their weapons, blah, 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 all this stuff. And like never saw a woman do it. And as soon as I came back on deployment I realized why. Because they took my rifle and I traded it for a purse, right? Like we already have this thing that is on us all the time that we cannot leave behind. That is like our life, right? And so we just have that skill, and men just couldn't. And then they get home and they're like freaking out for the first like couple weeks because they don't have their weapon.
The purse is interesting. I just think now of what that does to us. And is that better?
Well,
I don't think so.
So listen
right?
to this one. It's part of my effort to prove that everything is indeed about sexism. My car, right? My car is one of those cars where you push it and it just starts, right? If you have the key on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it would never work with me. And I have to find it and dig it out and put it in the slot and get it to work. Right. And then my husband's a pilot. So I am rarely in the driver's seat if he is there and conscious. Okay, so one day I think I was picking him up from a surgery. So I'm driving. So I get in the car, I sit down, I throw my purse on the passenger seat. And he goes, "Oh, is that what you usually do?" Because the car is made, of course, for a man. So it is made for you to have your key in the driver's seat. Oh, and by the way, until they made the Apple Watch, they did not realize that wearable technology, like tracking your steps, all this stuff didn't work for women because we don't wear our phones on us most of the time because they haven't given us usable pockets.
Yeah. But like even our source of like carrying your ID or carrying your proof of personhood on us and then externalizing it to a purse and putting it here and always needing to be mindful of it and like what happens if someone steals, I just wonder about that. Like what's going on? Because I get that
Oh,
sense even when I don't have a purse. It's like
yeah. And
something
how
feels
nice it
wrong.
is. I love an all-inclusive resort for many reasons, but one of the reasons is because it's so nice to just walk out of your room with an armband and nothing else and like not have to worry about things. And I'm like, oh, but this is
Yeah.
men all the time.
Yeah. And how much more energy and like ability you feel to do stuff. Even when I would just like not wear heels. And I would feel so much more like confident when I was like yelling out stuff. Because I could like dance and feel comfortable and not worry about where's the nearest seat. Because I wanted to be able to sit down because I really hate when my feet hurt. It's like not very little tolerance for that.
This is one of the things I feel like we will not be able to say that we do not live in a patriarchy until there is a version of corporate wear for women that is not a high heel. Because
I
this is
told I told
ridiculous.
I told I think I was on live and I was like, I need white women to start referring to men's suits as pantsuits. Because I think that would just be great. Because what do
Oh,
you
I'm
mean
gonna do that.
pantsuit? Why is it a pantsuit when I wear it? It's a suit. As if the original suit for me is not pants. I just think pantsuit
Right.
is a funny word, and men should wear pantsuits. Um, and like, but corporate is just. I am further and further, as I finish corporate cults finally, and realizing a lot of his results are just like, or not answers to it is like have independence, have a sense of self. You know that your choices are yours. Did you know that your choices are yours?
I loved his book. This was such a white man book, right? It
Oh
was
my
just like,
god.
I'm going to
Oh,
show you every way that corporations are cults, and then I'm just going to say, deal with it, take care of yourself.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what?
It's like this is how corporate environments are so bad for you. This is really bad for people working in there. So bad. If
And
and some of them aren't that much, but it can really be culty and you could see it. And but anyway, at the end,
yeah,
here's a test to see if you are in a corporate cult. And if you are, well, stop. Cut it out. Anyway, there's no like corporations should not do this. There is no people, there needs to be regulation. It's like, hey,
this is,
America,
and,
do this.
and
Like the
this is
wrong
part
people
of
got the work.
why And this is part of why people are so uncomfortable with me and my work, right? And they'll like roll their eyes at calling me a scholar or an expert. But like, because I'm like, yeah, the military is a cult. End of story. Like, there's no comfort pill. It's just like,
No.
it is exactly a cult.
You should like point to the
Every
white man's face and be like, he said it.
every I mean, every cult expert has had to give an answer, right? As
Yeah.
soon as you start talking about cults in American English, you're going to be asked, what about the military and what about AA, right? That in and of itself is, if
Right.
as soon as we define a cult, a certain group comes to mind, we should be listening to that,
And it's like
right?
they answered their
But
own question.
like, and this is why I had to like leave trying to do corporate culture consulting, because
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, everyone wants to laugh at me telling you like, I used to do this talk like what we can learn about leadership from cults, and the first 5 to 10 minutes I'm just going to give you stand up about how your organization is a cult, but then they don't want me to like point out all the real issues and be like, this is what you can do. They just want me to be like, okay, so
No, because it's to check something off. It is not to actually change anything. It is to present better, not to actually do anything. That's why there's no conflict actual like management. It's just like removal. And this is how we do it. We make this public display of listening and make sure everyone heard that we're listening, and we move on and we move
then we
forward
do
and we keep
exactly what we want.
going. Right. And that's it. That's done. But that's always been the case with the stock. These men in the stock market is not real. They made it up, right? And they believe in it so hard. And they literally hired these researchers, at the stock place to say, how can we determine who is successful and who's not? And they were like, actually, we looked at all your stuff and you could have picked a random generator and that would have been better than all these people that you're doing. And they were like, whoa, nuts. Anyway, so how do we give raises? They're like, you heard what we just said. Like, yeah, nuts, crazy. But since it's a lot of work, who do we give bonuses to? And at that point, you have to realize that's what y'all are doing to a certain demographic. It's like, who are you speaking to and why? And once you realize they're not listening, take that and then bring that somewhere. I don't know. Do something with that because that's nuts.
This is what made me really smile about your chapter where you're like, because I feel the same way. It's like, I just gave you 11 chapters. No, I just gave you 10 chapters about all of the problems with groups. Then I gave you like 4 pages about why the concept of good groups is not really a thing. And like, you still want to know about good groups. Like you're not listening.
That's listening for something else. And that's really it's a wild thing to know is happening. And it's infuriating because it's like you're looking at people who are asking, like it seems like they really want answers. You give them and then they're like it's almost like when people say listen to black women, they're like, okay, to do what? Can you do the first part first?
They want me to mention some groups, and there are like some groups that I feel like are okay right now, right? Like Patagonia or Costco, but like you are bonkers if you think I'm going to put that in my book that I want to be timeless and forever, right? Like
Right.
Enron had the word integrity carved in marble in front of their headquarters.
See, and that's the thing, like the learning about stuff and not learning from it is classic cultiness to me. It's like, they learn about something being wrong and then they amend, which is like that eracism. They just white it out as if we can't see that strip of whiteout you just put. What was under there? The N word? Wow. We need to know that. Don't just white it out. Acknowledge it. Write a chapter on we used to do this because this, and now we realize this. That could be it. You don't even have to have next steps and this is our new definition of whatever. But there's no acknowledgement. It's like that parent that comes back and they're like, you hungry? Yes, I know that means you're sorry, but actually I don't know. I don't think that that's a good thing. They should want to acknowledge your humanity in that situation and consequences and have to be accountable or whatever. But it's like, if all you're listening for is, am I a good or am I a bad? Or what are you saying about me? For me to defend or you're already coming from a I'm not enough standpoint. I don't know what to do about that. I want better for you.
In my video about blondness, right? And like how, like, literally, I am telling a story about why I am going off of blonde after 20 years and like the things that I learned. And the amount of women that were like, well, blah, 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 this is my situation. Is it still okay for me to be blonde?
Right.
And I'm like, what? Like, I am not your mother. Like, I am not okay. What does that even mean? Like, I just started saying to them, like, no matter what your situation is, you don't get to opt out of the history of blondness and white supremacy. It's totally up to you what you deal with that information with now, right?
Yeah,
but like,
let it
what
digest.
they want is for me to comfort them. Like, they want me to say that even though this is my journey, like, oh no, you're fine. Like, it's the same energy that people come to me about good groups with. And anyway, so I've just started being like, people are like, oh, what about good groups? And I'm like, oh, I don't study those.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's not, what do you mean? Because we're actually talking about the impacts of things and it's like, oh, now you want to focus on this other thing that I gave you all of this. It is for digestion and time and like, now you sit with it and you decide what you do with that information. And if it's nothing and it's continuing to keep your hair blonde, then that's what it is. But that's now a part of your journey as well. And it might start to make you uncomfortable when you keep spending money and energy thinking, why am I doing this? That's just, it's supposed to impact you. That's it. You don't have to publicly display your new knowledge with, and now I'm also like this because I'm allowed. But when I say, hey, white women, something, something, and they go, we're not allowed to something anymore. Allowed. And you're actually doing it right now. And they say like, imagine if I blah 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 blah. You're doing it, right? You're doing the thing. That paternalism and permission seeking and protection based on never doing anything wrong. I wrote that here. But it's like you're never doing anything.
This permission seeking, right? Like
Terrible.
I've started to say to people, like, if somebody is pulling you aside as an adult and telling you that you shouldn't be acting this way, like what you're in some
What?
sort of charismatic leadership authority, right? Because like unless they're the law, who are they to say that you should or shouldn't be doing that, right? Like that's a culty thing.
Yeah.
In your church where an elder could just come up to you and tell you that they don't like what you're doing or like how you're dressed, like that's the same as in the army and in cults,
That's paternalism. No one's more adulty than you if you're an adult. And I'm not talking 18. I'm talking you're an adult. Asking another adult, what am I allowed to wear and do and allow? What? That's paternalism. To even think. Or like when people try to tell me what to do, I'm just like, don't know what to do. Are you I'm an adult. I'm a grown internet stranger, but people genuinely, out of weaponized concern, will come to you and let you know, I don't think, be unladylike, be unprofessional, but call the bluff. Like nothing's going to happen to you. You've been doing all this silencing and self-censorship for so long, seeking permission, and they have terrible guidelines for what you're allowed to do. Like they're always going to default no. I didn't need permission to be white woman whisperer. I just realized, oh, I don't need permission. I just say it. That's what they do. They never ask for permission because they're the fathers. They just said, put our faces on that mountain right now.
This
The people will love it.
statistic that women won't apply to a job unless they have 80% or more of the qualifications and men will do it with 20%, like that
Yep,
literally changed like that changed
me
my
too.
whole life. I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm doing this. I don't
But
like
yeah, and it changed for me in a couple steps because first it was like, wow, that's great. And I would just start applying for stuff. But then you start to realize, oh, wait. There's a reason because of consequences that they do that. There is a lack of consequences for them in lying on their resumes or going for jobs they're not qualified for. People aren't questioning their reason for being there. So women kind of have to do all these things. It's not just like we're insecure, blah, blah, blah. It's a bunch of stuff. And we shouldn't be there, to be honest. I don't like it there. They're lying. They're lying to you. They make you lie, and you don't even realize why because you're
66 degrees, so you're always freezing because
you're whispering hi to each other in the hallways, or you're lying. How are you? I'm good. Hi. And once I realized people, I was like, what is this? I hate this. It's just so good. Hi. Oh, touching. We're on the same schedule. Oh, go to the bathroom. Don't go there. Don't go there. Do what you want, but I wouldn't. And it will encourage permission seeking from systems that want you to be a product and not a person. They're never going to say, go for it. They're going to just do it. But that means just do what we said. Even thinking about the term spinster and learning where it came from. And like, also like when we make things, they find it to be like, ugh, whatever. Because the difference between making and like making people do something. Women make people. Men make people do stuff. Buy stuff. Take stuff. Whatever. And stop it. Like we have to stop looking to them as the fathers of the country. And I think the paternalism is something white women should be looking into because they also use it, when it's like, well, if they really wanted to get their message out, they would say it like this. I think weird. Or like policing just policing things in comment sections and what are we talking about? What are we allowed to say? Nope. Just a lot more on the acceptance. But like, and I say take it seriously, not personally, but like not too seriously. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do know, but the concept, like I think questioning the words we're using. Why does this trigger me? Why does this make me want to ask this specific question? Looking in the comment sections and realizing 600 white people said the same exact thing in response, I think is so interesting, I guess, but like creepy. When someone makes a joke about white people, you'll see the search engine is always like, well, what about black people? And if someone says, I love black women, they're like, well, what about us? You don't do that about other things. But
My one
like,
that I've chosen to pick a fight with is whenever I see a story about a first black person to do anything, and then I go to the comments
mm-hmm.
looking for, oh my gosh, when's this not going to be news anymore? Because you know what's the great thing about news? When it's not new, it stops being news, right?
Right.
We don't have a lot of stories about black men in the NFL anymore. Like, but we do when a black woman becomes the first head of whatever at Johns Hopkins Medical School. Like,
Yeah.
because it's new. Like, this one is a self-solving problem. And it's
Right.
just like,
And like, but where does that trigger to say that specific thing is culty? That's where I say like it's a cult because
yeah, yeah,
it's specific. It's the same thing every time, and it's not just the thought they have. It is a reaction. It's putting it out there. It is saying it. This is what people are willing to say because they're that's a choice, and that comes from a place to do something. I'm not sure. It sounds like silencing anybody who talks about race. What are the words that people don't expect you to say? Say them, white women. Say as a white woman. Like it's really. But they just why do you gotta why? That's culty. That just expect that because that's weird. That's creepy McGeepy. But then you see
yeah.
black people don't say the same thing. We can have cultural jokes, but we don't say the exact same rebuttals.
And that is a sign of cultiness, right? And there was a great YouTube video going around for a while, and it was a bunch of AA members answering things in the exact same question and language, and then followed by a bunch of Scientology members
Oh,
saying things in the exact same
mm,
language. And
mm,
like this is how you know it is culty, right?
right.
Military people say things in the exact same language. And it's like exactly what you said, right? Like if it's just a legit thing, like people say it in a bunch of different ways. When you're in a
Right.
closed system and that's all you're listening to, like it's culty. You don't
It comes from a
realize
system. Because
that,
how do
but
you
that's how it gets there.
Yeah, because just think of logistically, or like, how is it possible that you are all saying the same thing? Like to me, I remember just being like, you guys aren't seeing this? I had to make a video just like, just look at the comments, and if you see 100 comments that sound exactly like yours, like that should, I don't know, that would concern me. When we first started, like, I don't have any original experiences. I think that's interesting, but the same antagonistic dismissal of something, it's also like what we're saying here, right? Or me as a that's why I said like identifying with people will help you way more than identifying as something. Like you, no one cares. Say what you have to say. If what you have to say is important and interesting, it'll stand. But the qualifiers now almost disqualify me from caring because you think I'm not gonna, I don't know. You don't think enough of yourself to just talk. You think, well, you're not gonna understand. Well, it gives a little paternalism, like introduction to the thing. We don't need that. Respect your audience more.
Yeah, and it's like you feel like you don't belong here, right? Like when you're when you have to show your credentials, it's
Yeah.
because people don't know you or aren't thinking of you, like
Right. You have to like prove, yeah, this is why I'm here, guys. Like, we didn't need that. We're looking at you. You're at the microphone. You're like, okay, so I have a question. We knew that because you picked up the microphone. Sorry. I just we have to
I've
be more self-assured, more self-secure.
it's funny. I've actually kind of caught myself doing this ever since working on this book, White Women Get Ready, because I have a sticker on my water bottle. And so every time I'll be saying something and I'll be saying some point that we have talked about in this or something. And I'll be like, I have a podcast with a black woman. We're deconstructing and I'm like, I don't I don't have to say that. Like, the thing that I'm saying is valid. I don't have
Mhm.
to be like,
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 this is exactly why.
right.
Yeah, because it can have
Like
its
you don't have
place.
to know that I'm a white woman working on deconstructing internalized white supremacy for this thing that I'm saying to be valid.
Right.
Um,
Both things can be and are true, but it's
yeah.
not like you don't need
And I
to
just
explain
I
yourself. That's
and
what
I
you don't. Yeah.
noticed that. Yeah, and this was something we said very early on in the podcast, but one of the tips I was given early on in deconstructing internalized white supremacy was just like be curious about what things surprise you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is
Yeah.
the kind of like where I'm like, I notice these things now, and I'm like, okay, I
And
didn't,
that's how you know, like, you're listening.
I didn't think that. I thought I was pretty confident in myself and saying things, but obviously in this area, I'm not, and
Right.
that's fine, right? Like, I don't need to be super confident about deconstructing it yet, but sharing the
No.
thing is valid in itself.
Right. And building confidence is probably a building of the confidence, right? It's practicing enough to catch us and go, oh, I tend to do this. Um, because you're having
Yeah,
the conversations that you even are able to catch that. You know,
yeah.
so it's like that's not a negative score or -2 or anything. It's actually like, oh, like as I do this, I notice this, and I tend to, because you come from especially a world of credential, of proving credibility. Like you've done all the ways you can prove credibility, and so of course there's some like, and also this is a cool thing to do, so it gives
Yeah, and
some
also they still
backing.
come for you no matter how much you prove credibility, so it doesn't
Right,
matter.
it's
I
like
feel like
not a
I'm
thing.
just gonna start showing up now being like, Rebecca, I got 75 on my anti-racism score this week.
And it's like, oh, you made 75 points. Like, like you're even on it. Right. So there's people, and Black women know that. So it's always being also aware that when you are speaking on it and trying, you you can't make mistakes unless you're trying. Right. And they're not mistakes. We're not a cult. We're not with clipboard. We're literally just like, okay. And then if we may hear something and go, well, if you think it's just that, it's never, ha, gotcha. You got you messed up. You it's but white women may want that a
Yeah.
little bit. Black women do not want that. We don't want discouragement because you try like there are people who are still they're still saying women in general, right? And there's something dehumanizing about being included and ignored at the same time
Mm-hmm.
that I talked about with dehumanization. That when white women talk about women's issues and refuse to acknowledge their whiteness, that is a lot more harmful, enraging, and it's in a lack of action. So you can't even point it out because they'll say, I didn't do anything wrong. I was talking about Black women. There's plausible deniability there. So you speaking up as a white woman, saying white woman stuff, and then as a result, showing that you're a white woman through white woman behavior, that's okay. Like, we know you're white. Like you said, with the whole, like, you can be into rap and like Black music without being a Black person, because that's not what we expected you to just be Black. We expected you to be a white girl that know the dance moves, or go white girl, go white girl. That's meant endearingly, right? But if it were reverse, imagine it in reverse, that would have been terrible, right? But it's not reverse. It's not
Yeah.
opposite. They're like completely different reasons for pointing out, a flaw. And I think
Yeah.
people get super reactive because it's like, they caught me.
Yeah.
They caught me being white.
Well, that's a
Got it.
good tool, I think. Maybe a good place for us to end today. But
Yep.
just like, because of course, if people say that to me all the time, well, if it was reversed, I'd be like, but it's not. But it's not.
If it were reverse, or it already is, or something, because they do to me. Imagine if someone made Black Woman Whisperer and they said, oh, you mean like the news or something? I don't know. It already exists. That's why you're mad about it. And you're saying, like, we're not allowed. I can't get away with doing what you're doing. Okay. If it were reverse, and people used to say, if I were if the rolls were burnt at 60, were baked at this degree, and like make fun of the whole if the roles were reversed thing. But like
Oh
they
my
were,
God.
I don't know. If you have to start with imagine,
I
let
have
it
to
go.
tell you about this one. So I was the equal opportunity officer for my battalion, right? So like I was the DEI person.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's Hispanic Heritage Month. And so we are putting on a Hispanic Heritage potluck. And I am there and I am dancing and I am running it and I love salsa dancing. And literally every single white officer in my battalion was like, but Daniela's from Brazil. She's not Hispanic. Like, what? And it was like, first of all, I'm
Oy.
just the person in this job. Second of all, you can just go enjoy Hispanic culture
You could
without
just,
being Hispanic. It
yeah.
was just, there was just so many levels of like where I just literally I was like, nope, not justifying this to you. Move on.
It's where
Like,
intersectionality really throws people off sometimes. And I've had it with men who find out I'm Jewish and I'm Black. It's an and. I'm not a pie where like half of my body is Jewish and like half my body is Black, and I'm like, well, no, it's an and. Um, whoa, that's why Black women, but it is a different experience being an and. It's unique and it's awesome, but I have different perspectives. It's not a more or less. I mean, it is kind of more, but not in the hierarchy. It is a broader understanding of things, or maybe a deeper understanding of how people can be different and similar, and not say these people are like this, these people are like this, because you see commonalities and common energies between all these different sectors, and you can play with that. But
it's also
in the
just a
value system of
childish way,
that,
a
so
childish way of categorizing people, and that ties into the paternalism right there.
yeah, the kids are like this kid does this, is the good kid, this is the bad kid, this is the kid who likes sports, this is it's that, it's that.
I literally think that at the end of the day, like what I have noticed in my own journey is like it comes down to this. Like white people are like, okay, now that white supremacy is coming down, what's going to make me better, right? What's going to make me special? How are people going to know I'm the good one? And the answer is just nothing.
You never were either.
Nothing. Nobody, yeah. And
Call the bluff.
you have to get to know people. You have to get to know people to know who they are, as it has always been throughout time.
Yeah,
Right?
surprise,
Like,
they weren't bringing you flowers because you're so great. It's because you
yeah.
smelled bad.
Yeah.
Now that you know that,
Right.
we're gonna
Yeah.
wash up. We're not gonna, go, how do I get people to bring me flowers next time? Nope. Nope.
It's like we can all keep bringing each other flowers and we can all just take baths, Like we
Like,
can do all of it.
right. And the black, and you'll feel better. It'll be good. Like everything. Your house is gonna smell good. It's the simple things.
Oh,
No faces
simple.
on mountains, people in bathtubs. I like that.
There you have it, friends. Check out White Woman Whisperer's Patreon, which will be linked below. She's a very good series on the tenets of white supremacy, which are also making an appearance in The Culting of America. And like and subscribe to the podcast. Thank you all so much. If you haven't read Uncultured yet, what are you doing?
Yeah, come on, get with it.
Bye.